We're joined today by three beautiful young men from IACMI, the Composites Institute, but specifically, well, yeah, three beautiful young men and then Alex.
Right.
Composites Institute, I do want to talk about a little bit because I think that's, people would just like to know what that is and where the metal comes from. But this group in particular are the group that are really focused on a relatively new program within IACMI called Metal, which is heavily about casting and foundry work metal, which comes out of the Defense Department. So I actually am going to throw over to you, Justin.
Sure. So IACMI was set up by the Department of Energy in 2015. So we're actually on our 10-year celebration. Uh, and it was intended as a research and development with a focus on commercialization, with Department of Energy being the guiding light. Within that, we did have a internship program that was really well put together and organized. And so when we were doing that, we hired some workforce development staff. During that time of operation, there was a new project that was brought up by the Department of Defense, America's Cutting Edge, that they new technology was being developed by Oak Ridge National Labs and University of Tennessee, and they needed somebody to do the workforce development component. And where we're located, IACMI's headquarters is in Knoxville, we were kind of in the smack dab right in the middle of that. And so it was decided that we could be that workforce development launching point. And so America's Cutting Edge focused on machine tooling and kind of bringing that industry back in and training those workers. That's where we got our kind of cut our teeth on workforce development. And then that program is ran for, we're on about 5 years now. And 2 years ago, the metal program, another project by the Department of Defense focused on the casting and forging industry, they wanted to kind of replicate that program we had built with ACE for the casting and forging industry. And that partnership started with UT and Penn State to develop the curriculum. And we're kind of launching that now. And we've got 4 schools under our belt with Ohio State, University of Alabama, Birmingham, UT, and Penn State as our kind of first quad group of schools that are running the program and putting people through it.
We've got estimates vary, but millions of open manufacturing jobs, and in theory, millions of people who could fill those, but a mismatch of training, the right kind of jobs, the right pay. There's a whole bunch of different factors. We'll be able to get into it, but very specifically, would it be fair to say that a lot of the work IACMI does and the ACE and Metal programs, you guys are really not a government organization, but very heavily connected to what the government says we need for defense in particular is like a big part of it.
Right. IACME is a nonprofit, but I really look at us as a catalyst to get done what what is needed by those departments, whether it's Department of Energy or Department of Defense. In this case, in these programs, Department of Defense, and they look at us as the catalyst that can get it done.
Now, Justin, you specifically, what was your manufacturing background? What did you do before Acme?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of how I got led to IACME. My background is in manufacturing. So the job I had previous to this was I was a maintenance manager for a Department of Defense contractor that made lugs and bombs for the Air Force and the Navy. Prior to that, I worked at Oshkosh Defense where I was a welding instructor. That's where my passion kind of lied. I found that passion in instructing people with a new trade and seeing them light up when they get a skill that they can utilize that can grow into a career path. And when I left Oshkosh and went into maintenance, I kind of missed that. And so the opportunity come to kind of get back into that at IACME, and now I get to do it on a national scale. I mean, we've got over 14,000 people who went through our online program just learning about, you know, how to get back into manufacturing, how to upskill.
Now, this is a bit of a rabbit hole, but when you say lugs and bombs, do you
Yeah.
mean like literal lugs like that would go into an equipment or into like a vehicle, and then that's just a funny pairing.
It
We
is.
make
It
we
is.
make lugs and we make bombs, but I
So
mean,
I will say at the facility that I worked at, we did not make we made training bombs or
Mm.
dummy bombs, non-explosive, but they used them for training.
Well,
Uh,
do you see that barrel sticking out from my books up there? You see that? That's my M19 1930 cal training gun.
yeah, train.
I,
Yeah,
I I appreciate a nice training weapon.
I was told by the Department of Defense that it's all training until it's designated not to be. We created the same lugs that hold actual weaponized bombs on airplanes. So that's something else we built there.
Actually, Justin, why don't you set up David and Greg? Like, give an introduction on the parts of the program that they're in charge of.
Sure. America's Cutting Edge, which is our machine tooling program. David Roberson is our lead trainer and our kind of go-to technical person for that program. So, David, you want to kind of give a roundabout on your background?
I can. So I come kind of from a long line of maintenance as well. Started out of high school at a manufacturing facility and worked there for a number of years. Wound up leaving there, and I had always had a calling to join the Marine Corps. Got to achieve that goal. Did a couple of tours, and when I came back, I decided that I needed to take another path, and they assured me that a path back into the civilian world would be easy.
Mm.
And so I went down that path and found out that it really wasn't that easy. So I struggled for a bit, and then finally decided that I was wasting the skill set that I'd been given, and decided that I was going to find out how to exactly that I needed to get back into machining, because it was something that I fell in love with early, and I wanted to get back into it, but I knew that I needed further and updated training. So I went back to school, left there, spent some odd years in the industry. Actually wound up getting called back to teach at the school that I'd attended.
That's cool.
And then during that period, IACMI came along and said, "Hey, we kind of like what you're doing over there in Knoxville. We'd like for you to come do it for the rest of the nation." And being that I still had a strong patriot side of me, I was all about reshoring and bringing back American manufacturing. That's something that holds a very, very big spot in my heart. If you would have asked me, especially at the low point after the Marine Corps, if I would be on the level of doing things and being impactful in the United States again, like I felt like I was when I was in the Marine Corps, I'd have probably told you no. But this has gave me impact and purpose again to be a part of this program.
That's huge. When you said you had 11 machining, were you a machinist in the Corps, or was that something before the Marines?
I actually wanted to be a machinist in the Marine Corps, but it was actually prior. I'd studied machining in high school. It's mostly manual machining, but then I was machining castings for a big manufacturing company over in Maryville, where I lived, which is just outside of Knoxville. But worked for them for about 6 years doing finished machining on castings, and that's kind of what allowed me to fit well in the environment that we're going into now, to where we both have both the machining and the casting and forging programs, because that's one thing that kind of hit me early on when we started talking about it, was how the fact that there should be a collaboration, because they go hand in hand all the time.
But what was your lived experience? Was it that people weren't judging your service as highly as you would expected? There weren't the kind of jobs you were looking for? Like, what was that actual? I know it was a bummer at the time, but what was that time actually like?
Well, unfortunately, at the time, I hadn't given a lot of thought into like jumping back into a manufacturing setup like that. I had originally tried enlisting in the Marine Corps as a machinist, and that path didn't wind up working out. So I became a small arms repair technician. And so basically anything from a 9 millimeter pistol all the way up to 81 millimeter mortar, I made it go bang. Yes, sir. That's very, very familiar with a lot of the weapon systems that are out there. It was something I did enjoy, because I had grown up owning firearms and being around firearms. So it kind of just followed suit for me to fall right into that. But I wanted to pursue that actually when I got out of the Marine Corps. I wanted to be a gunsmith. So I started contacting some companies, and everybody was just like, "No, no, we don't need anybody, or you don't have enough experience. An armor is much different than a gunsmith." And I was like, well, that's the only thing was, is I wasn't just doing armor things. I did a lot of things that were outside of the scope of my work, just because I was interested in guns. I wanted to be the best that I could possibly be at what I did. That's something that luckily I've carried from childhood. It was kind of instilled with me from my father, and that's anything I show up to do, I want to be the absolute best at it. But then from there, I knew that, you know, what nest egg that I had saved up from my time in the military and everything was running thin, so I had to figure something out. And so I started going out and checking into other different jobs, going back kind of the manufacturing route and checking a few places there and kind of a lot of dry leads. And then I finally just thought, okay, well, it's getting desperate now, so I've got to figure something out. And wound up finally getting in touch with a big box store, and they're like, well, we'll pick you up for security. You've got a military background, you can do security. And I was like, well, I said, the funny thing about security is the reason that I left the Marine Corps was so that my son can grow up with a father. I was like, there's one thing about security that puts me in another aspect of where at any day the right man could come up and try and take my life and take my son's father away. So that's something I wasn't looking to do, but then ultimately had to go into, was just
Uh,
doing security work.
question, David. What year or years was this experience? When did you get out of the Corps?
2011
Okay.
was when I made my exit.
I mean, the reason I asked is because the political mood and the policies at the time very different from what's happening right now. And I'm
Correct.
curious to know, maybe out of you or Justin or Craig, what is the shortfall or anticipated shortfall of machinists and experts in bending metal that we need in this country to execute on the reshoring that people are talking about?
I mean, I think I could always go back to it's the baby boomers, right? In industry, a lot of those people with those skill sets are aging out. When I was working in manufacturing, the guys that had all the knowledge were in their late 50s, and that was several years ago. And, one thing we always hear about is tribal knowledge, tribal knowledge. Well, if there's no one to pass that on to, and that guy retires, you've lost a skill set that's just gone forever. And that comes from manual machining all the way up through, even cutting edge CNC machining. We just don't have the young people. We need to get them interested into those career paths. And I'm one of those. When I graduated high school, I was on the college path, right? I went to college with aspirations. I was a first generation college student, and then I got there and I was like, what am I going to do with a degree in something I don't really care about? So I ended up dropping out of school and going into manufacturing. And what I realized was, man, if somebody would have told me in a couple of years I could make good money and not be in debt, and there was an opportunity for me to grow my career, I would have probably done that right out of high school. My family, they all worked in industry. That's what raised me. I think I had a pretty good childhood, went on vacations all the time with family. That's a concern. We're going to reshore and bring jobs back. We need to make sure that there's people trained to take those positions and interested in it.
Yeah, I think this comes up a lot and on this podcast, and has recently in conversation, which is a lot of people our age were told not to go into manufacturing because of a variety of reasons. It's dangerous, it's bad, and sometimes it is dangerous, sometimes it is bad. Like that not every shop is great, but the idea of it not having a path. I think what's really happened, because I'll tell you, there's a million conversations that are happening among people that went to school and got degrees and are maybe in their late 30s right now, who the tech industry laid off hundreds of thousands of people over the last couple of years. And so there's this big sea change of like, hey, things are really changing a lot, but there's not as many people out there going, this manufacturing thing, what they told you 20 years ago, it's a different situation now. Part of it is, I think Mike Rowe always talks like the 5 out, 2 in, like the boomers are going and it comes, there's only 2 people coming back to replace. But like, where do you see the specific industries where a lot of your people that you're training and getting up, like where are the growth industries that you guys are seeing the demand from?
We are Southeast, Midwest. We're creeping up into the Northeast, but overall, it's what we are seeing is we're getting a lot of feedback of new development, new manufacturing development in states. So when I go out to conferences, I often get representatives from states coming up and saying, "Hey, we got a new industrial complex that's coming up in our area, and we'd like to learn how we can get ACE or metal there to kind of get that pipeline of people started to be interested in that career path. So it's a little bit of everywhere. I mean, I just saw a new development where there's a large investment in Louisiana in the steel industry. So that, to me, that perks my mind to say maybe metal should go there. We should be in Louisiana to support that.
But when people are going through ACE or metal, what is the actually experience that they're having?
I was about to say I can share on the ACE side if Greg would like to share on the metal side.
Perfect.
With ACE, we basically got about 6 hours of online content that an individual will go through that'll kind of expose them on the front end of what they can expect if when they finish this online content, if they want to come join us for a in-person boot camp. So after the online content and you get familiar a little bit with the programming side of it, the computer aided manufacturing, you qualify for a boot camp and then you come out and it's roughly about a 5 day, depending on how the partner has it structured. You've got either a week long or some of them space the 5 days out, but you've got 5 days worth of content where you actually go from a model of the part, bring it into CAM software, you program the machine within that software, generate a G code, put that into the machine, and you machine all the parts of the air engine at the end of the week that you assemble and you're able to take home at that point, show friends and family that, hey, that's I had every aspect of creating this, and this is a functional working small air motor. It's basically a trinket, but I mean it shows and exposes them just to what you're capable of doing within a manufacturing environment like that, and just the precision that can be achieved with a piece of CNC equipment.
And when you say partner, so the boot camps, you partner with some company or facility or somebody they're not coming to it like an IACMI facility. They're actually going to a working facility to use the equipment in situ, like in a real spot.
Yes, that's most of the partners are colleges, community colleges, and different individuals like that. We do have some Haas factory outlets that are starting to partner with us now, and they're doing training in house, which is great because that's if I was going to attend the boot camp, that's probably one of the places that I would love to be able to attend because they have the latest and greatest that Haas has to offer there. And I always like I am a CNC machinist at heart, so I always love my toys.
And Greg's, tell us about metal, which is the newest program. How, is it still set up by and large in that kind of same format?
Yeah, it's very similar. We have a 8 hour course, online course that we can that the anybody that wants to participate can take. And it's I'm gonna say it's kind of mid level, going on just the casting process and the properties of metals and how those things work and how they work together in conjunction. Then once you take that, we have what's called a boot camp at most of these at like Ohio State or University of Tennessee or Penn State or UAB. One of our partners that's partnered up with us on the metal side, and you go there for typically it's a 4 to 5 day class. They go in there and there's just you spend about the first day of some little bit of class work going through some CAD and CAM and designing things and talking about the program and how it's set up. And then the next 2 or 3 days, it's all mostly just hands on. You're getting right in the meat of things. You're building modes and going in there, and there's it's all been designed by Penn State. It's all kind of set up, but each one of these universities kind of may do their own twist to it per se. But like I said, those guys go in there and gals will go in there and do the hands-on part. We just did one at the University of Tennessee that I participated in personally, and we had a broad range of engineering students, art students, had several business people, had some people that were in between jobs that were there, just wanting to see what the metal program was about. So but anyway, they go through there and they'll make a sign, they'll make some medallions. We did a stretch mode at the University of Tennessee theirs, which was different. But I said it's just introducing them to the casting process of making things and doing that hands-on stuff. But back to like students there, we had several engineering students, there that had never ran a drill, had never used a grinder, had never used and I was kind of ticked back by that. And with my background, I came from manufacturing, well, kind of like Justin. Did that for about 20 plus years. Worked in aerospace, woodworking, automotive, and then I transitioned to K through 12 education my last 10 years, and worked with some special needs children. I had a special education degree, but once they found out I had some engineering background, they put me with CTE and at the high school. So you know, having these engineering students not ever using a drill, not using practical applications, it was very eye opening for me to how important this program really is, and also for other businesses. I mean, we had some business people there that were just interested in the casting process, and they came out of that with being able to talk the talk, and introduce them to touch up to some. They had a 3D printing company is what they have. So it sparked their interest to start making molds. So they went out and started talking to other casting facilities and forging facilities and seeing what their needs are, and they started getting more business. So it's just a win for everybody.
My dad fought World War II, and he didn't talk about it much, but towards the end of his life, right before Y2K, and we saw. I remember watching TV with him, and all the talk about like the economy is going to crash. There's going to be a shock to the system. It's all coming apart. And he turns to me and he says, we Americans, we've had it real good for a long time. And those, all your science fiction movies, your zombie movies, is like on the other side of that event, you will know immediately who knows how to do stuff, who doesn't. Son, you're a very funny guy, but you don't know how to fix all the stuff you love, especially your cars. And then he died. But I never forgot that speech. And now whenever I see anything, whatever, any zombie movie, nuclear, anything, and on the other side of that, I'm like, wow, I a lot of these folks really don't have much to contribute, although they say they want to, they don't. So I'm curious. We've had a political shock to the system recently. How much of a meaningful uptick have we seen in people who would otherwise have had no interest and nothing to do with machining and manufacturing, finding your organization and wanting to actually be on the right side of knowledge when something bad happens?
I mean, we've definitely seen an uptick in people being interested in the program, and I think that's just because, hey, there's more factories that are opening their door. There's more contracts going out. There's more work to being done, and I believe that the public as a whole can see that transition starting to happen. There's going to be more work being done in the states, and I look at these programs. There's two main components, right? We have a hands-on training. A lot of people offer like an online course, but when you actually get to make something with your hands, with the machine, and you get to take it home with you at the end of the day, there's a level of accomplishment that we've seen, young, old. I mean, we've seen all ages and demographics come through our program, and everybody gets excited about it. At the ACE program, the last day when they're assembling the air engine, there's a competition of who can assemble it the fastest. That is the day where you're like, man, people really love this part. And then the other component is just in a short period of time, 1 week, really dedicate 1 week to these programs, and you're going to have something that you can put on your resume, and you're going to get the knowledge to go into these interviews and talk about what they're doing on the job site. I've hired hundreds of people, off the street, and I wish that they had had a program like Ace or Metal to prepare them just for those initial interviews, to give them that baseline knowledge that's so good on the shop floor.
Yeah. Now you say you give a certification through this, and everybody obviously knows it's a week, and I couldn't agree with you more on the hands-on stuff, right? Like I'm a nerd at heart. Like I grew up, like I was a summer farm kid and stuff, so like I have more hands-on experience than most, but my biggest problem, and I've had to train myself out of it for years, like having been a tech guy and engineer, that kind of stuff, is I'll sit and plan, or I'll read and do the research forever before I jump into a project. And that's good. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's hilarious when I got to use a new tool or a new process or something. And then the first time I go to use it and I'm like, oh wait, this is totally different than what I thought it was going to be. Like The first time you set something on fire with a grinder and hadn't even thought about, like, oh, it turns out these sparks, maybe something I need to think about. Uh, and then as far as cost goes, because in my head, a lot of this stuff is more for students, and obviously a lot of younger people are doing it. But you're saying also people from industry or whatever else it is. Is it, if you go through the online portion and do that work, are these boot camps free for anybody? Is that how that works?
All the training that IACMI provides through all the programs is completely free to the participants.
All right. Take the other side. So you guys are doing something great. It's necessary. DOE agrees, helps, get a lot of that in there. What are you guys seeing as far as the folks that are coming through, certainly over the last 10 years? What are some of the big misconceptions that you're running into? I guess I kind of want to say culturally, and not about the individual people or the groups of people, but like the presumptions that they have about what the careers are, and then what kind of presumptions do they have? I'm thinking specifically here things like, well, I don't know if I want to get into manufacturing because it can be dangerous and dirty. And like the reality is, yes, it can be dangerous and dirty. Like that's not a myth. But what are the major themes and questions that you get from people that don't have a lot of experience when they start to walk in? How are their expectations misaligned?
Greg, you come from industry and you've been to these camps. Do you want to throw your hat in the ring on that?
Yeah, and that's a good point there, Joe. Just like you said there, I mean, a lot of people come in, and if you go into a foundry, I mean, it's hot, it's dirty, there's black graphite and oil going everywhere. I mean, it's just not the ideal place. And for many years, we've sold everybody. I'm going, let's go to a 4-year college and get that degree, and you can sit in air conditioning, sit behind a computer, and so that's kind of what's been sold. But in these boot camps, with these, like I said, these kids and adults, or I call them kids. These are college students, but they love the hands-on part of getting dirty. They're just like I said, the camp that I went to and attended. We had a material science engineer there that he was running a mix. Was making slurry to go into one of the modes, and he was running that mixer, and it was just going everywhere. I mean, he had on his jeans, on his boots, and his face, and there was a smile on his face while that was happening. I think the misconception is there, but what I see coming from the high school side of my previous employment is that these kids are wanting to go back to work. These kids are wanting to do what has to be done. That's what I saw. They're ready to go and get out of mom and dad's house. Much like we were back when we couldn't wait to turn 18, go to work, be independent, and make our own mark. And that's kind of what the metal program's giving these kids and students and adults, and giving them a way to learn how to do these hands-on activities and learn something new to spark that interest in going into the casting, the forging industry.
That I think one thing that we're starting to learn, and maybe the younger generation is starting to learn, is when you think about industry, a lot of people think of, I'm going to be working on this one cell, I'm going to be making this one widget, that's going to be my job forever. And I think what is starting to come out is like there's a job in manufacturing for everybody, whether you're a quality guy or you're a data guy or you're an organizational manager. There is a job for every individual, every background in manufacturing. It's so much more than one cell operator, push button, press comes down. There's so much more that goes into the engineering, and a lot of companies are grabbing that and saying like, hey, come here, start here, and we're going to help guide you to that where you want to go. I mean, my background, I was that operator. I was in tier 1 automotive. I made pistons in a foundry all day. I watched the press close in. I watched the metal go and pour, and pistons came out, and I checked them, and that was my job. But then they led me to how to improve these processes. And I found that continuous improvement and process improvement was something I was passionate about. And that's kind of, that company guided me down the path. And when I decided to go back to school to get an education, not only did I have so much more knowledge and skill set to take with me, the company paid for it. So that was beneficial to me as well.
Have you had those experiences where people just look at it and they go, "This is not what I expected at all"?
I think everybody comes into it looking to gain something. If you go through the metal program, you are pouring metal, and it is a little dirty, can be a little dangerous. But I think they're going in open minded. Maybe they're not looking to do this as a career path. I will say, from a manufacturing or recruitment standpoint, it'd be really nice to know who was definitely not interested in this before I offered them a job, went through onboarding and invested in that individual. But overall, I think uh, we have like a 90% approval rating of the program from everybody across the board.
What was the episode? Was it The Simpsons? Where, this episode of The Simpsons where somebody, the neighbor, the guy with the mustache, like, there's like a leak in his kitchen or his fridge doesn't work. And he's like, yeah, we're totally gonna, during COVID, it's like, yeah, we'll call the guy. We'll just call the guy. And he calls the guy to fix like the fridge. And he's like, I can't, I'm busy. I'm busy getting my Ferrari fixed. But maybe next month. Y'all remember that episode? Like, there's some peculiar thing. I mean, maybe it goes back to what my dad said about the externalization of like essential knowledge. And, I have, I'm an idiot. I have an old Citroen French car. Don't recommend it. I love it. But no, but like, not only do I not have the knowledge to fix it, I can't even find the parts. There's like 3 guys in America with the parts, and basic stuff. Frankly, uh, I I I feel like there's still a lot of people who aren't getting it yet. That they need to have these basic skills. The country needs them to have these skills. Actually, This is not a political statement, but the thing which really got me was, I mean, let's talk about guns, okay? Like, it's a many states you can't buy one. I live in Arizona, you can. And a firearm is one of the last things you can buy that's just a machine, an analog machine. There's no chips in them. There's nothing, no electronics. And if you can't maintain it, it can hurt you and someone else if you don't know how to fix it. And I remember when I moved to Phoenix, someone invited me down to like the nice range. I go there and there's a guy in there and he's bought like all the weapons from John Wick because he's just cool. And when he's done, he takes his bag of these incredibly expensive firearms and he's like, yep. And he just drops it off at like the gunsmith at the shop. And he's like, can you clean all these for me? And this one's got a thing. Can you fix it for me? And I'm like, wow, talk about externalizing basic knowledge that invests so much in owning a tool, a machine, and not even be willing to learn or even do it yourself, given the opportunity. And now this is not about guns anymore, but that's a very dangerous strain of psychology to have growing in any country, especially this country, for decades. And I mean, what is missing from, like, do you have an oversupply of people who want to join your program, Justin? Like, do you need more? Do you want
Oh,
more?
we'll take more. I mean,
okay, so
yeah.
So what needs to happen messaging wise and education wise to address this psychology of so many people who don't get it, that this isn't like a nice thing to have. This isn't just a thing you should know to get a job, but it is an essential thing that is good to know to be an adult in the future.
I think I would tell a classroom of kids to take a look around the room and of what the chair you're sitting in, from the table your hands rest upon to everything in this room was built by somebody in manufacturing. And the majority of folks I think they've just lost that. They forgot. They just, it's kind of like, where's the ground beef come from? Well, it comes from the grocery store, right? So, but there's a whole method of manufacturing that's involved in everything you utilize, everything you do. And it's important to know where that comes from, how it's developed. And if you have some of those skills, you never know when you might need them. And I really do believe that this 1 week program, whether it's ACE or metal, I hope, my goal is all these people get interested in manufacturing. But if they don't go to work in manufacturing, but maybe it sparks that hands-on trade skill. I'm interested in doing something, working with my hands and making something cool. That's a win for me. I used to say the biggest win when I worked at Oshkosh and I was a welding instructor when somebody quit and told me they were going to go do their own welding business. They've been doing their, I've been side hustling doing this thing and I'm going to go do it on my own now. I was like, that's awesome. We made another trade skill person that wants to do something with their hands because there's not enough of those. That's what we need to.
And now he drives a Ferrari. So
and he will not come and weld your gate when it breaks because he is busy.
No, he's real busy.
Do you feel like they have a good understanding of that in general, or is that something that still, like, maybe your program is the first time they really have that click for them?
Well, I think myself personally, like when we do like the hands-on workshops, we go to like we do outreaches with high school students. We'll go into a school and we'll set up a little casting like where we just use sand and just like back in the Egyptian days where we made castings, you know. So let's go and put a part in there. You have a coat to drag. You make where you pour your metal in. You melt some tin. You pour it in, and they actually see that being made when they make something and be able to touch it, feel it, work it. I think they kind of get an understanding of what's going on there, what the purpose of it is. So, to me, that's where it's important, and I think that's where we've kind of missed the bus per se is, through your K through 12, we focus so much just on just teaching kids to read, teaching kids on math, and lost focus on looking at trying to teach them careers, different things out there. Still focusing on, you've got to be able to do this or do that in 3 different ways. But at the same time, we got to introduce some manufacturing things to them. We got to introduce how things are made to them, and I think that's kind of what the metal program does. We're going and introducing casting to them, and they're seeing how something's made, how you melt it, you make the mold, and then you pour the metal in. It produces a product, so it gives them a good understanding of that.
Now, does IACMI or any of the programs within IACMI, do you guys do any job placement stuff, or does that kind of happen organically with like the partners and other things? Like, is there a step after these boot camps?
We do a little bit of it with the metal program, which metal stands for the Metallurgical Engineering Trades Apprenticeship and Learning. That's that program. So we do have an apprenticeship model. We have several apprenticeships placed, and then we do look at our partners, these schools, to help line up individuals with the next step, whether that's furthering a technical degree path or a certificate or finding jobs. So one thing we've seen beneficial is a lot of the schools we work with, they already have great industry relationships. They've already kind of built that network. So when industry comes in the house and checks out the boot camps and they're like, wow, like this is cool. You're in 1 week, you're teaching these people. We've seen those manufacturing locations go to events to hire people directly. Because if you, like you said earlier, they've already shown initiative. They did an online course because they wanted to. They've showed up to a boot camp. I know it's free, but still that took your week. You dedicated a week's time to it. And as somebody who's sat at job fairs for days on end and maybe get 4 candidates and none of them are good, this way I could go to a location. You've got 10 candidates that's already shown some drive of their own, and I can recruit directly from that. It just makes life a lot easier for companies. So we do see that.
I have a question for David. When you left the Marine Corps, like, was there I don't know what you call it, like a departure, like meeting, discussion, class, anything about job opportunities post military?
We had classes and everything that explained to us how to take, and that's what was odd to me is it had been explained to me how to take my experiences and the skill set that I had and make it applicable to different jobs. And then we even had some individuals come in that were interested in recruiting Marines for the city of Jacksonville. Unfortunately, I did not want to stay in eastern North Carolina. I wanted to come back home to the hills of Tennessee. So as I came back, I tried utilizing that. I did have what I thought and what other individuals had told me was a very good looking resume, but I was just coming up against a lot of dead ends, and I couldn't find something like a niche to really get into.
So this is a question for anyone, like what in a perfect world, what would the relationship look like between the armed forces, the folks who are leaving the armed forces, and organizations like yours?
I want to be a part of that kind of bridge to get people that are coming out of the armed forces into those jobs. And I think it's a great bridge because it's a program that's supported by the DoD, by IBAS, the Industrial Base Assessment and Sustainment Program. So we could line up individuals coming out of the forces into a training program and then hopefully line them up with industry and it be a smooth transition. Also, it gets them in the door of a, currently you can go to university, community college, tech school. I hope they see something at these programs that they're like, oh, this is it. This is the next step. And this is how I want to get into, work again. Just to go back to a sense of normality, I believe.
For me, I don't even see the need in waiting. This is something I feel like could be done. A majority of your larger military installations have a machine shop on base somewhere. So I don't see why there wouldn't be an issue with trying to set up some kind of training, offering that to all the individuals on base. It doesn't have to be something that's mandatory or anything like that. That's any of my fellow veterans that may watch this, they're going to know that mandatory training is not the way to go. But you offer this training to individuals while they're even in service. You give the capability to close your machine shop off for a week, give these individuals training. And, those guys that are torn, should I re-enlist? Can I really get a job out somewhere? They want to leave the military, but they're too afraid to because they don't have that security. This
So
this could possibly give individuals security to even leave active service and be able to join that workforce.
in every, well, not every, but in maybe not current, but in older generations of war films, every one would often see, like on a submarine or a naval warship, the machine shop, like if they get hit by kamikaze hits the, and then suddenly all these guys are pulling out 2x4s. The machine shop's in full tilt to repair the vessel, and damage control and repair is everything. Are all those folks on those ships in real life? Are they learning machining and these skills like in the military, or are they looking for folks who are coming in who predisposed or with prior knowledge?
Like obviously the active duty individuals, they are instructed on machining when they go into the military, but there are also contracted civilians because they do see the need for that higher level of experience, and they need those individuals in there to kind of bring the rest of them along to where they need to be, because that's the last thing that you want. Just like in the scenario that you're talking about, you're out on ship and you get hit and you need to make a repair. You don't want a ship full of machinists that only have maybe a couple of years of experience. If they come across a complex issue, they may not have the skill set to jump into action and take care of that in a timely manner. And especially when you're out in the middle of the ocean fighting, you don't have a lot of time on your hands to fix a problem.
What's the future of IACMI for the part that you guys work on? Is the goal to go really deeper? Things past these boot camps, like potentially job program or whatever, or is it to go wider, like try to hit more of the country, work with more partners? Where's your priority right now?
Of course, right now, ACE has been around for about 5 years. Metal is just really getting started. Both of them, especially Metal, is in a kind of a ramp up phase, and we're trying to broaden that and go wider. With ACE, we have 40 training locations right now. Of course, that's only in 14 states, but we're trying to be, for our future growth, we want to be more strategic. Where is the industry? Where's the need, right? So we work with partners that pull, data sets for us to get a better understanding of the manufacturing need in certain regions. We want to make sure we're there. So we do want to expand. With Metal, we're also looking at what's next. Looking at, we have later versions of the curriculum that are like the next step. We want to introduce people to Industry 4.0, Industry 5.0, kind of AI related programs, and then specific training modules to specialized processes. We want Metal to help facilitate those, as because with machining's pretty. There's machining sites everywhere.
It was a false dichotomy. The casting stuff's particularly funny. We've had people on the show before who are even just saying it's like, I went out and bid this casting job to 5 different shops, and it's not like they could say we can or we can't. It was like literally their process was different for each, and they'd come back with different, shear tolerances or whatever. And it's like in theory you would think that'd be pretty universal, but it does seem. Whereas CAD and CAM and CNC is, it's kind of coming out of universal machines. It's a little more of a standardized thing. That makes sense. When you talk about the data partners and people that are kind of helping you figure out where to expand, is it useful at all if somebody's listening to the show and they're like, hey, I'm building I'm making an investment, I'm building a factory here or there. Should they reach out to you guys and just give you another data point and say, hey, we'd be potentially interested in trying to work together?
Absolutely. I would recommend Greg Harrell. He's a great point of contact.
Here's a really good dude. Here's a really good dude.
Well, you look at the apprentice side of things. I mean, there's that need out there, and we have partners for that, like Jobs for the Future. They help us with apprenticeships and the registration part of those things, and we kind of can be a one-stop shop for people like that. So
I've got one question. I've had a plan since I was about 16 years old to find an automotive Votech and do that thing that may be apocryphal, but go send them a car and donate it to them, and then all I got to do is wait like 2 semesters, and it's going to come back perfect.
Oh, speaking of tricks, okay, I've got a '73 Citroen which uses these metal spheres that are custom made for old Citroens for the pneumatic suspension system, and I can't find them. And if you guys want this car,
we just pivoted our whole podcast. Is we're just going to talk to people and then try to get like free, skilled labor.
Vintage car.
Yeah,
they got to be machined. There's nowhere to. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I've got this old submarine, guys. I got it off of Gov Deals, and I can't fix it myself. So
wait, did you see the guy who bought the cruise ship from the movie, the Bond movie from the '60s, and he couldn't repair it, and no yard wanted it? All right, that's for another show. That's for another show. All right,
that's the same guy with all the guns from the range. Same guy.
Oh yeah, that must be the guy.
All right, so Justin, if anybody wants to get involved in these programs and reach out, where's we'll have the links in the show and everything, but like, where's a place that people should start?
Yeah, you can go to metalforamerica.org, or you can go to americascuttingedge.org for both of our major programs, and there's registration links on there, and you can track the locations of all our training sites. So hopefully we have one near you, and if we don't, we hope to have one near you very soon.
I've got the marketing campaign for IACMI. I've got it. Okay.
All right.
After every post-apocalyptic show on TV, okay, you run ads like, do you want to survive this? You can.
That's right. Yeah, I will say that one of the guys that I work with here at IACMI, his daughter came home, and they were learning about casting from history in class, and he was like, "That's the moment right there, right? That's the moment where the teacher could go over here to the little lab and do a scratch mold, and they could make like a little knife, just."
Yeah.
Cast a little knife.
If you guys want help starting your own YouTube channel, what I say, I just watched the new The Last of Us, that new the zombie show on
That's
HBO.
what I was thinking about. These people don't know how to do anything.
But what I want to see is an after show. All those after shows for all that fantasy stuff they do, like, oh, did this character do this, and oh, they murdered this, and all that drama. I want to see one which is a bunch of people that actually know how stuff goes together, to be like, if they would have known casting, they wouldn't have had to build that wagon that way.
Yeah.
Or if they would have, instead of growing the plants with this thing, they could have gotten that one CNC machine done. And then whenever the aliens came in, like, they could have done that. I want like an alternate path of like, here's how we would do our zombie apocalypse.
And Lord be my witness and help me with it. I want him to understand how to manufacture things and do things on his own, because we have became a nation of consumers.
Yeah.
And it is terrible, because everybody's used to just walking down and grabbing something off the shelf and saying, you know what, this is good enough. It's maybe not the quality of something that I could have made, but it's good enough because it's readily accessible. What's it say on the back of it? China? That'll be all right. Don't worry about it, guys. Let's go to the house. And they don't realize is that slowly over the generations we have lost sight of building quality products and doing things for ourselves. And in the process, we've exposed ourselves to being humble to somebody else because they make everything for us.
Humbled is the right word for sure. And I think I want to underline something you said, which I really believe too, which is uh like, look, every teenager and kid can be a punk. Like, I'm not saying that that's not true, but like, you can't blame any of the kids right now that aren't considering these things, because we don't put the examples up in front of them anymore. And I'm not saying even America's been great about that. It's certainly in my lifetime, but like, it's almost nothing now. And so what you guys are doing, even just breaking the seal and being like, look, here, this is what reality looks like a little bit more. Here's a taste of it. Like, yeah, but it's important not to, I just never really can hold on to or entertain an argument too much for people to be like, well, kids don't want to do this. It's like, they don't know. So like, somebody's got to tell them that that's even an option before they can make a decision.
Yeah, but let's put it in perspective, though. I mean, you look at like 92% of our submarines, tanks, and aircraft is built from a casting, right? That's correct. And so who are we relying on now to build those castings? China, India. It's not a lot done in the United States. That's the reality of it. That's our security depends on filling this pipeline of workers that can do these things we need to have done here.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot from, well, we should have learned a lot from COVID. And I'm not a pacifist strictly, but I'm not like gung ho.
He's
I'm not
not
trying
nice.
to.
He's not nice.
Yeah, in globally, I'm nice. Like, I'm not. It's like I'm not trying to have a war, but it's insane how much just in that scenario we couldn't keep online here. Like, and that's like an immediate thing. But we talk about a lot too, and it's hard to put numbers on it. It's hard to quantify it, but I also think you guys are pointing at it as well, which is there's just something lost in a culture, in a society, when you can't make it on your own. And for most of our lifetimes, and we are men of a certain age, like we've been around for a while. In most of our lifetimes, I think there was this idea of like, well, if we wanted to make it, we could, but like, but we're going to send that to Vietnam, or, we're going to do these parts globally or whatever. And I think what's causing a lot of people to freak out a little bit, and I think we should freak out, is like, there's a lot of stuff right now that we're smart enough and maybe hardworking enough and even driven enough to do it. But we just do not have the infrastructure, the raw materials. There's just a bunch of stuff that we don't have. And we are perilously close, probably a generation at most away, if we kept going down this path, where we would just not be able to do to keep our military running, let alone if there was a war or just some sort of catastrophe like we had with COVID or something else that slowed it down. There's a lot of how this whole country works, from transformers to, asphalt to a bunch of stuff that just would stop. And that's why Alex and I, that was a big part of why we kicked this off, is like, doesn't seem like a partisan issue. It's not even necessary. I mean, it's obviously a national security issue, but it's not just that. It's literally, we should be able to make this stuff. And you have to have a certain threshold of that with skilled trades and an industry that's doing it. And that on its own is a worthwhile reason to do it. So I think what you guys are doing is great. I also totally, we didn't talk about it much, but the fact that you're all educators and have that background, I think is can't be overstated. Like, it's really cool that you're going, hey, how do we continue? This is my favorite part of it, is passing it on, and we need more people like you that are doing it. So so keep it up. But thank you so much for coming on. We'll send people your way, and if Alex and I ever get off our white lily ass and come out for a week, like, you guys,
Dave, we got to talk about optics, and we got to talk offline, man.
Yeah, definitely. That's talk about going down a rabbit hole. We can go down one there.
I was thinking Alex goes through a couple of our programs. Next thing you know, they have that French car back on the road.
There we
Yeah.
go. That's right.
I
sure.
should. I should.
He set himself up for that. Hey, there's a part that really needs to get made. Now you got a mission. You got to rebuild French part.
It.
Yeah, I love it. All right, y'all. Great having you on.
Thank you,
We'll have you on
gentlemen.
again in the future, I'm sure. But we'll send people to IACMI and the Metal and ACE programs. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.